Micheál Murray described the Wexford hurling team of the 50s and early 60s as one of the greatest teams he's ever seen and his own favourite team of all time. To remember the passing of Tim Flood, I'm joined by former Wexford senior hurling manager Liam Griffin. Good morning to you, Liam.
Morning, Alan.
Liam, it's a sad day. He lived a long life. He was born on the 8th of January 1927, but he has bade farewell to us around Clubon and indeed around all aspects of County Wexford. He will be remembered with great fondness, Tim Flood. What will your own memories of him be?
Well, I suppose essentially he was a modest man, a man who was humble about all of his achievements. I suppose he was a man that he was a rounded individual. He represented Ireland in sheepdog trials. He was an excellent hurler, a very good musician. Most people would be glad to have one of those skills, but he had them all, and he was a thorough gentleman to boot, and a magnificent hurler.
In a week that we saw Nicky Racker's medal, his 55 All-Ireland medal, being sold at auction and bought back by his family for €17,500. Kind of puts things in perspective just how lauded these individuals were. Are they remembered even nowadays, or should they be remembered more, these men of the 50s?
Well, it's very difficult for people in the modern era to try and remember. But for me, it's very difficult to get this across to people in a kind of a manner that they would fully understand. I was actually around the end of the 50s, and my first Ireland final was the 1960s. This was an amazing time. This was an amazing time in County Wexford. Like everything, revolved around the hurling team, and there was a time of great depression, obviously, as well, and a lot of immigration. And I think that didn't actually happen in Wexford to the same extent, because the spirits were lifted by this team. And the thing that must be remembered, and I think remembered most in terms of Tim Flood, is that, and I think the selling and buying, and delighted to see the Racker family have bought that medal back again. But that epitomises what esteem that team is held in, because don't forget. We won the Ireland in 1910 Wexford, but technically that was an All-Ireland Club All-Ireland, which was won by the Shelmaliers. So the first All-Ireland that was won by Wexford, technically as a county, was 1955. And it has to be remembered that no team, if you look through the teams and you get to sheets out and look at who won All-Irelands right through when it started into an inter-county competition, the traditional counties, our first team ever to make a breakthrough was actually Wexford, followed by Offaly later on. Like a lot of other counties had been there before. But that was led, in fairness, by Nicky Racker, and it was led then by a magnificent band of men that played with him. And all of them will testify that the unity that they had was exceptional. But they raised the county on their backs, literally, and they raised the mood and standard of the county. And Tim Flood was one of the artisans in that team. He was one of the class hurlers on that team. He really was.
Yeah, he was a forward. Was he half forward, full forward, or did he play along both lines?
Actually, if he was in a modern game, he could have played anywhere from midfield, but he played in half forward line and corner forward. And, there's a unique thing there. Obviously, I'd be friendly with Ned Wheeler, who's still well and fit and in great shape. But in 1954, Wexford went to the Ireland final, and they were beaten in the Ireland final by Cork, as we remember. That was the famous day that Nick O'Donnell was injured and had to go, and Bobby Racker and Billy Racker changed places. And, so a lot of history attached to that particular game, which is brilliantly written in Nicky Furlong's book, The Greatest Hurling Decade. But on that occasion, 54, there was only 3 Wexford men picked on the Leinster team, and the 3 Wexford men were Ned Wheeler at centre back, and Tim Flood was at left half forward, and Mick O'Hanlon, who was a man who overcame a handicapped hand to play corner back for Wexford at that particular time, was selected on the Leinster team. And Leinster hadn't won a championship, a Railway Cup, for 13 years, when Jim Langton was the last man to win a medal. So Tim was selected in that band and played for Leinster several times. And but what I remember about him most was I met Matt Hassett, who was a captain of the Tipperary team in 1960 that Wexford beat. And I reminded him of a fantastic point that Tim Flood got, and his quick retort to me was, "You keep quiet about that. Myself and yourself are the only two men in Ireland that know that outside of Tim Flood." But it was a magnificent point. And I at one stage, Tim came back to play an Ireland final, and I think that was his first game in the championship. Either that was 60 or 62 now. I may be slightly wrong, but I think I'm right. And Tim Flood came with a ball from underneath the Cusack stand on the left-hand side of the field, playing down into Canal End. He brought the ball on the hurl, and he turned the hurl backwards as he was going, took the ball down over his head, brought it down the far side, and without putting his hand on the ball, he stuck it over the bar. Yeah. Now, I never saw anything like that in my life before or since. I saw some amazing skills on the hurling field, but I never saw anything like that. And all in one movement. He was a magnificent hurler. And he would have frustrated people by his soloing, but he could solo in and then turn around and solo back out again. But boy, could he play.
Yeah, and did his success go hand in hand with the success of Clabon? I see they tasted their first success in 1946 when they captured a county junior hurling title, and then they went on to capture a senior county title. So hand in hand with Tim's rise was the rise of Clabon too?
Oh yes, I mean Clabon were very strong back in those days. As were Ratnewer and the Aidens. Sadly, no more. But now the referees at this stage. But there was some great hurling teams emerging, because don't forget, hurling was becoming fashionable in County Wexford for a number of years. And don't ever forget as well, this is incomprehensible in today's world. When you look at the crowds and you see this thing, Wexford produced 83,000 people, I think, at 2 All-Ireland finals. The 54 and 56 All-Ireland, Wexford produced something like, and that the glamour team that Wexford were in 54 and coming through there to 54 All-Ireland final, and also having contested the league final in 56 where they came back from 14 points down to beat Tipperary. That particular team attracted 83,000 people or thereabouts to Croke Park. I think I'm right, roughly around that kind of, which is absolutely amazing when you consider there was no crowd control to the extent that there is today.
And one of your men of 96 was, of course, Shawnee Flood, and I went to school with Ger Flood. He passed it on, didn't he, Tim Flood?
He did, and to be fair to Shawnee, he inherited from his father. Some of the great silken skills in the game. And one of my great regrets in life was that Shawnee Flood wasn't able to take the field with us in 96. And Ger Flood reminded me last night, and it was true. We were in the Stillorgan Park Hotel before the Ireland final, and I was upset for Shawnee. We gave him right till the Wednesday before the Ireland to try and prove his fitness, and unfortunately he pulled up lame. And I actually remember putting my hand on his shoulder and saying, "Shawnee, listen," and the tears were welling up in his eyes. But he made a speech to us. When I asked him, and I said, "Shawnee, I want you to say a few words," he said, "Oh, Ginny, I don't want to do that." So I didn't like to do it, because he was modest and a thorough gentleman like his father. But he made a speech that day, and as Gerry said to me last night, Shawnee Flood's speech made a difference to us that day too. And I'm damn sure it did, because Liam Dunn, George O'Connor, Damien Fitzhenry, I could name the lot, John O'Connor, Ger Cush, these guys, Billy Byrne, they'd all soldiered with Shawnee Flood, and he had a great affection. They had a great affection in their heart for him, as the other players of the 1950s had for their father, and rightly so. And
okay.
Rightly so.
I have to leave it for the moment, Liam, but I'm just going to ask you to summarise in your own words what the legend of Tim Flood will be.
Well, the legend of Tim Flood will be that he was inextricably linked to the team of the 1950s. He's part of the Rackard era, part of the Wheeler era, Paddy Kehoe era, and all of that. That team was, without doubt, the greatest Wexford team ever to take the field, and one of the greatest teams to grace the hurling field. And as regards the promotion of the game of hurling, the greatest promoter ever for the game of hurling.
God be good to Tim.
My pipe of clay. when on judgment day I rise, that putty clay shall greet my eyes. For heaven will be heaven to me only, if I can smoke my black